It's slim pickings in the transfer portal when it comes to a quarterback, but looks like there's still one good QB left.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. I wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I'm plenty smart enough to talk Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. We want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you go to download those podcasts, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the show, we will get into his new defensive coordinator, Jason Seymour, trying to reunite with his former player. Will the wide receiver position be the last position that Brent Key fills? But first, Jarvis, of course, everyone's favorite subject, talking a little quarterback, okay? Because we are now just, 3 days away from the transfer portal closing?
Yes.
And then that's it. And who you have on your roster, essentially, unless the coach gets fired or moves, or, any sort of that type of situation. But as far as being able to get a quarterback out of the transfer portal, there's only a couple of days left for the Yellow Jackets to be able to pull this thing off. And we're seeing guys getting snatched left and right. Someone that you and I had spent some time talking about, maybe not real excited on, and we're facing a position where maybe we were going to have to talk ourselves into Bo Pribula. It appears that Pribula is going to head up to Virginia, and so now a name that has been linked with the Yellow Jackets is a guy who was a backup, Jake Merklinger, out of the University of Tennessee. So I ask you, Jarvis, would Jake Merklinger be a fit for the Yellow Jackets at quarterback?
He would be a fit to come in to have an old school quarterback competition.
You think so?
Yeah, man. I mean, I can't give a guy like that with me having Graham Knowles sitting right there waiting, just waiting, patiently waiting, and I look at the numbers, which they aren't much, it isn't much to look at, and say, this guy's going to be the starter and you have to be the backup. I look at it like this, man. I'm totally fine with that. I feel like he'll be a perfect fit because I've been saying, like, when we've been having these discussions about the different quarterbacks that they've brought in or had in for a visit or were considering, paying a nice piece of change to, I said, you know what? I wouldn't mind the old school competition. And Jake Merklinger is a guy that I feel is the perfect or the prototype to be in a competition, because like if Merklinger is confident in what he brings to the table, because he doesn't have a shot at Tennessee to be the starter. Hey, come down here, you can compete. We got a couple guys, we got a red shirt sophomore and Graham Knowles. And we got an incoming freshman, early enrollee, and Cole Bergeron coming in. You guys just battle it out. Hey, and we got a new OC, so there's no real, hey, I like this guy last year and I like what he did, and none of that. It's a clean slate. So I think right now, Merklinger is the perfect candidate to pair with or put into a three-pronged competition and say, hey, we're going to figure out who the starter going to be in the spring.
So I get from the perspective of, like, Merklinger was not a starter, right, for Tennessee. He and Joey Aguilar competed in camp last year. Ultimately, they went with Aguilar, who had the more experience. Well, now, even though it's not been in a ton of games, last season in 3 separate occasions that he was able to get on the field for the Vols, he does have playing experience more than Graham Knowles does, because you and I were talking about before the show, kind of the funny situation with Graham Knowles is you pull up his stats and you're like, the man threw one pass and it was an 84-yard touchdown. I mean, it must
Not a
have
bomb,
been
not a
an
bomb though.
incredible bomb. And yet, what was it, Jarvis?
It was a nice screen. Because before we even, figured out what type of touchdown pass it was, thinking back and end up looking it up just to make sure, I was like, man, it's Buster. This is Buster offense, man. Of course it was a screen. As soon as you found it, you just bust out laughing. I was like, yeah, that was pretty fun. I was like, yeah, given the type of offense that was run last year, a successful one.
Yeah.
It's just kind of understand that you don't necessarily need the greatest arm to operate in Buster's offense. We'll see how George Gossey, moving forward, especially when they get out on the grass in the spring.
Yeah, so the thing about Jake Merklinger is the guy has an arm, has some serious arm talent. It's been limited sample sizes at the University of Tennessee, but hey, that's what happens when you're not the starter. I just found it interesting pulling up the numbers and seeing, hey, he's 3 for 4 on passes, 20 yards or more. So clearly he has the arm strength. Is not a super gonna, go out and scramble type guy, but has some mobility to him. And the thing that I think interests me, Jarvis, with Merklinger is just the simple fact that he will be coachable. You got 3 years that you'll be able to have him in your program potentially if things go well, and you see, some progress and potential out of who he can be. The thing that kept bugging me about some of the other options that were out there in the portal is just knowing it was only going to be a 1-year possibility. Now, what do we know about how the transfer portal is going and the future of college football? A lot of guys are changing teams every single season, but at least if you have the possibility of, we can develop this guy like we were able to develop a Haynes King. Now, obviously, a Haynes King, very different situation. Had been given the opportunity to start. It didn't go well, and vice versa. All that sort of stuff happens. With Merklinger, though, you see the talent there. He's also technically a local kid from the state of Georgia, private school down in Savannah. And so, having the prototype quarterback body of 6'3", 215, you go, okay, this is someone that, the Yellow Jackets would save some money. Not that we're necessarily worried about penny pinching, but you would certainly save some money getting him versus some of the other guys that have been connected to this program. And I think it's Brent Key and George Godsey will be able to sell potential when it comes to Jake Merklinger versus anyone else they would have gotten out of the transfer portal. Would have kind of been like, hey, maybe don't focus so much on what he's done at his previous stop, but focus on what he can be. I think with Merklinger, there's just enough of a small sample size that you're like, okay, let's see a little bit more of that.
And I think that you make a great point because they do have a Heisman winning trophy quarterback on there.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's
what I'm saying. Like talked as a quarterback coach.
It felt like, Jarvis, the minute that Godsey kind of came in and Chris Winkie went back to his role as quarterback coach, we haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about him, but you're so right that that is a huge piece to have.
That is a weapon, man. And he understands who Graham Knowles is and what he's capable of. I'm pretty sure he won't share that with us, but I'm sure that he can. They're pinpointing guys that maybe don't want to be in that $5-6 million market or $3 or $4 million market or whatever Bo Prabula was thinking he was worth in the portal, whatever Virginia end up paying him. And they can say, pinpoint a guy like they did Haynes King, like it didn't work out for him at Texas A&M, and he was able to come here and be one of those dudes. And I think that this might be a similar situation. And I think that if they were to bring Merklinger in and they have that competition and Graham Knowles is involved and maybe Cole Bergeron is involved, I don't see a true freshman quarterback coming in starting in today's land, man, unless you're like a 5-star plus guy. Yeah, man, it's gonna be hard for those guys to break the barrier now. Given the landscape of the portal and guys basically getting free agent quarterbacks every year. Specifically Miami, down bottom. That's no shade. That's no shade. Just hey, that's how they operate. It's okay. That's okay. But having a guy like Chris Winkie on your belt who used to do this, like he was a quarterback whisperer type guy. Like, he's one of those first guys that you kind of look at and like, oh, you wanna learn how to play quarterback? We'll talk to Chris. And I think that Haynes King probably vouch for that. And I think Merklinger, if he decides to come here, that'll be very interesting. I will be very interested to see what his trajectory is because I like what I see. You got the arm strength, you got the pocket mobility within the pocket. You can move around a little bit. He's not a statue back there, which you have to be in college football nowadays. So, yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, pretty typical to a young quarterback. The things that stood out to me is very comfortable making throws when he wasn't under pressure, but when that pressure was there, you kind of saw the okay, this is where the development side of things needs to happen, and you would have that time to make that happen if you're able to get him in your program with that 3 years of eligibility. All right, looking from the quarterback position, still seems like a position that needs to be addressed, and looking towards another position that Jarvis starting to get a little bit concerned. Is wide receiver going to be the last position that Brent Key fills? The new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and how it feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Hey, maybe you're dealing with all of the Christmas decorations. I know me and the wife have been trying to figure out how to put it all neatly and orderly back into our storage. Take a look at Wayfair. It's got everything for a full home refresh all in one place, whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space like I've been doing, or upgrading your work from home setup. It makes shopping easy, delivery is smooth, everything arrives exactly as expected. Get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Jarvis, as I mentioned right there before the break, you start seeing the wide receiver position for Georgia Tech going into 2026. And as much as we joked about, hey, if Justice Haynes comes in here, that's going to be a huge piece. Who does it really matter who your quarterback and your wide receivers are and all that sort of stuff? I mean, we joke, but in all seriousness, yes, very much matters. And if you get Jake Merklinger, okay, maybe you've figured out part of that puzzle, but there is still the puzzle of the wide receiver position. And I ask Jarvis, is that going to be the last position that Brent Key maybe fills?
When you got guys like Ja'Cory Thomas, who we talked about, the wide receiver out of Old Dominion, he signed, he committed, and not Carr, he committed to. Thomas went to Vanderbilt. Okay, all right. Carr went to Wake Forest. Oh, okay, all right. Those not the best schools. And I'm just like, all right. And then I had I got punched in the face with reality. You know what I'm saying? I got a quick punch. It's just like, man, we just look into the NFL. When you think about wide receivers are mainly divas, especially the good ones.
Yeah.
You got some humble cats. Some of them are humble every now and then. But for the most part, the really, really good wide receivers, they got some little diva in them, and they are pretty straightforward as to what they're looking for when they're on the open market. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about NIL and guys coming out of the portal. There are two things that first came to mind, Caleb. One, money.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's important. And two, who throwing me the football? And Brent, and God bless them, Chris and George, Goose, whatever you want to call them, they don't have an answer to that right now. Like, they don't have a straightforward answer like, hey, man, this is going to be our guy. You know, here's who we're looking at right now to be our starter. They can't truthfully really say that. And I don't think that Key is out here telling guys who the quarterback is going to be and who their starter is going to be, because I feel like Key is a pretty straightforward guy. So if you can't answer that question, I understand why these guys going to other schools. Because, I mean, come on, man. I understand Vanderbilt, they did the thing, then the SEC, yay, Clark Lee, hey. But no, man, that ain't, you ain't supposed to be in the same conversation with those cats. So I look at it like this, man. This is a position he's going to have to prioritize in these last few days that the portal is open. And I'm not saying he got to get 17 guys, but at least got to get one or two, maybe.
Yeah, Jarvis, we've reached the point where, I'm taking a serious look at, reports out there that a guy like Cal wide receiver Javen Plummer is going to be on campus on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I like his measurables: 6'3", 215, two catches for 86 yards in 2 games in 2025. Now, 86 yards off of 2 catches. Clearly, there's some explosiveness there.
Yeah.
However, 2 catches in 2 games. Hasn't been a lot of availability, there for Plummer to play. Mm-hmm. And when you're reaching this time in the portal where you're looking at a guy who caught 2 passes, that's not someone that's going to be towards the top of your depth chart when it comes to wide receiver. So I'm curious, Jarvis. I'm looking at Zion Taylor. I'm looking at Jamari Bryce going, hey, I know y'all put y'all's names in the portal, and maybe y'all were doing that because you weren't sure about how things were going to end up. But maybe you would consider an opportunity back at the Flats,
Yeah, and and when you put it that way, like, those guys gonna have to come to reality.
Mm-hmm.
I understand you want to figure out what your value is. I understand there was some questioning as to what is going on with the offense. You saw all your buddies walk out the door. You saw you guys graduate, and the wide receiver room, you saw little Jordan Allen over there just holding it down pretty much by himself as far as guys who actually had caught a football last year.
Wide receiver 1.
Basically, so it's just like, all right, you really want to try to go test this market. And I ain't heard nobody checking for Zion Taylor. I mean, no shade. I'm just saying, like, there's still some hope here. There's some light to get some playing time. So you can stay in the portal, and this is Brent Key talking. I'm putting on my Brent Key hat. You can stay in the portal. That's fine. If you want to leave, feel like it's not the right situation for you, that's cool. But let's be real. Look at the situation. Look at where we are. You really want to leave when you got nothing but space and opportunity to get some balls. Pause. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know?
Opportunity for playing time.
Nothing but ops, baby. It's nothing but ops here. So just saying, man, like I wouldn't, if I'm Key, I wouldn't know what else to say. I'm just like, do you want a little more bread? Like open your mouth. Let's have a conversation like that. Like you have to be straight with these cats, man, because at the end of the day, if you're making a business decision or you're making a decision that you put some thought into, it's like, okay, let's lay it out on the table. Let's have a conversation. Just say, if you want to play, all right, cool. There's opportunity for you to play here. All right, coach. You know, I'll never forget when I had a really straightforward conversation with my coach, and I ain't really know what I was doing because I wasn't grown. I was just coming off the top of the dome, just having a conversation with him. And I'm just like, man, look, I had to look that man in the eye and tell him exactly how I was feeling. I said, hey, man, there's no way X player, X guy should be playing in front of me. And he didn't have a response. He didn't have anything to say because he knew I was telling the truth. And it wasn't like I had an ego. It was just like, I know I'm better than them cats. So, and he respected that. So, Zion, hear me. These guys will respect you for the rest of your life. And I can call my coach to this day, like for anything. Like I could text them, call them, ask them to do me a favor. Just recently did that. And he'll give me whatever I need. Whatever you need, Jarvis, I got you. Cool. Because coaches respect guys who tell the truth. Tell the truth. Because you want that. You want me to tell you the truth. So why don't you tell me the truth? If you want a little bit more money, hey man, just say that.
It's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening ultimately by the time the portal closes, what the wide receiver room looks like for Georgia Tech. Because, right now, Jordan's looking around like, hey, who's going to catch passes with me in 2026? But let's wrap up the show looking at new defensive coordinator Jason Seymour. Is he trying to reunite with one of his former players? There is nothing like college football season. I mean, you got the tailgates, the packed stadiums, being right in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. We've only got one game left to really enjoy all of that. But getting tickets to games, whether it's for the national championship or in the future, it can be frustrating. You got long queues, logins, prices that jump at checkout because of all the hidden fees. That's why you need to use GameTime. It gives the advantage back to fans, and it's the easiest way to unlock amazing deals with college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. They let you know all the fees up front, so it makes the whole process stress-free. It takes the guesswork out of buying college football tickets, and you can take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Jarvis, look, I think both you and I have really liked what we've seen out of Jason Seymour so far, and the potential of what he can bring to this program. Also the part of this that I remember talking about was the recruiting element. And with right now the recruiting element being the transfer portal, you take a look at former players of Jason Seymour and anybody who might want to make that transition from smaller school, make that jump to a bigger program as coming from Southern Miss and potentially was going to go to Memphis and now ends up at Georgia Tech. It seems like you might have found a former player of Jason Seymour that could be interesting in Atlanta.
Yeah, man. When you look at linebacker Chris Jones, 6 feet, 230 pounds. He has 179 tackles, 76 solo, 4.5 sacks, 3 PBUs, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 picks in the past 2 seasons. And he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Oh my goodness. You talk about production, he's not the biggest guy, 6 feet solid, more than like he about 5'11", 3/4, because they always give you that 1/4 inch. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody about to say I'm 5'11", 3/4.
Yeah.
So, but he's a thumper though. Like he's a guy that can, come down here and come get after it, obviously, and get around that football and make plays. So he decommitted from Ole Miss recently. And you start looking at, okay, coach, you going to Memphis. Oh, okay, that's nice. All right, coach. And then next thing you know, Jason Seymour has been hired as a defense coordinator for Georgia Tech. That's the ACC. That's the Power 4. It's a lot more eyeballs. Potentially get into the college football playoff. Go down to Ole Miss, where I don't know what's going to happen at Ole Miss now that Lane Kiffin's out of there,
Yeah.
I know they won a playoff game, you know what I'm saying? But, it's still a little shaky. I don't know what's going to go down there. But I know I can flourish in my old coach system. I know that I can be the leader of the defense and be kind of like the coach on the field and help guys, transition into what we got going on. I know I can play there. That's for sure. So, yeah, man, when you think about, and that's the thing about bringing guys in, like, not only do you have to be able to coach, but you got to have some relationships, man, some package deals, because that's just how it works. You see what Buster did. Buster doggone raid this doggone roster. He took everybody and their mama down there. Who all want to come down here and ride the bench? Sorry. My apologies. I'm being petty, Caleb.
You're not lying.
Yeah, I mean,
not lying though.
Just saying. But yeah. So I think that this is a relationship piece that could potentially work out in Tech's favor, because when you have a guy decommit all of a sudden, when his DC got another job in a conference that's looking real sexy right now, because that school down there in down bottom in the 305, they about to get ready to play the national championship. So more eyeballs, more scouts. So hey, if I come here, ball one more year, shoot, I can doggone put my name in the draft. That's just how it works.
Yeah. Well, Jarvis, I think a part of what makes this even more enticing is a late portal addition or subtraction, I guess maybe you want to call it, for Georgia Tech, with Taj Butler going out the door. This was a linebacker that you and I had talked about as like, man, he has got to get more playing time in 2026 for Georgia Tech, especially what you saw from him towards the end of the year in a group that was awful. Just awful, honestly. Did not produce nearly enough. And I felt like Taj Butler was one of the highlights of that group. And so seeing him enter the transfer portal and knowing his future, is uncertain. And you see a guy that, Seymour has coached before with Chris Jones, and also someone that's got more than just 1 year of eligibility. You think, okay, this feels like what could be a really nice pairing together. And then, getting to say that you poached a guy, got him from Ole Miss, I think would be nice as well. So just it's one of those, the stats are definitely there. You mentioned the size not being jump off the page or anything like that, but it's kind of twitchy, and how you use your size is, kind of what's obviously important when it comes to the football field. So it's going to be interesting to see what Georgia Tech is able to do specifically in that linebacker group, but then just across the board through the transfer portal, as we've been mentioning, just a couple of days, just 3 days left to go until this thing is all wrapped up and the roster will be set. And then the discussions, Jarvis, begin of, okay, who's starting over who and what is this all going to look like, and expectations all are going to get really kind of more solidified once this transfer portal closes. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked on Georgia Tech. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts for free. Follow the show on social media at Locked On Georgia Tech, as well as Jarvis at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more. All for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.